Good afternoon. I'll start off with the travels of our Secretary General, who, as you know, is in Japan, where earlier this morning he addressed the 9th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, which is actually taking place in Yokohama this year. The Secretary General said that for more than 3 decades, TICAD, as the conference is known, has embodied the spirit of multilateralism, grounded in mutual respect and shared responsibility, and a deep belief in Africa's potential. This meeting, he added, comes at a time of interconnected crises and deep inequalities. Tackling these crises, he said, requires a clear focus not only on development for Africa, but development with Africa. On the sidelines, he met with the Prime Minister of Japan, Ishiba Shigeru. They exchanged views on a number of issues, including global and regional issues. Mr. Guterres also met with Dr. Tanaka Akihito, the president of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, which is the organizer of the conference. In all his meetings and exchanges, the Secretary General emphasized that enhanced cooperation needs to focus on areas where strategic partnerships can drive inclusive growth in Africa, creating this decent jobs and accelerating progress towards Agenda 2063 and the Sustainable Development Goals. The schedule for tomorrow in Yokohama includes more bilateral meetings with attendees of the conference and a press encounter with your colleagues in Yokohama. Turning to the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that the situation is increasingly dire, with children and adults killed, injured, and displaced every single day. Starvation and malnutrition continue to deepen. And as an example, our colleagues of UNRWA have just shared the latest malnutrition data with us. They are the largest provider of nutrition screening and treatment in Gaza. They have, since March of this year, when the ceasefire collapsed, UNRWA has screened over 95,000 children aged 6 months to 5 years for malnutrition across the Gaza Strip. The prevalence of acute malnutrition has risen 15.8% in the first half of August. This means that according to UNRWA's data, malnutrition has tripled across the Gaza Strip since the ceasefire collapsed. And in Gaza City, acute malnutrition has now reached 28.5%, meaning more than 1 in 4 children in Gaza City is now considered malnourished. According to UNRWA screenings, malnutrition in Gaza City is now almost 6 times the level since the ceasefire. But despite the impediments and the systematic restrictions, we and our partners are sparing no effort to bring critical food and supplies into the Gaza Strip to avoid an even further deterioration of the situation. Today, OCHA released an update on what it delivered in Gaza between the 3rd and the 16th of August. A few highlights for you. On food, teams brought in about 12,000 metric tons of wheat flour and other supplies and supported more than 80 community kitchens, providing over 400,000 meals every day. That's twice as much as late July, but less than half of what we were able to bring in April. On nutrition, UNICEF brought in enough therapeutic food for 30,000 acutely malnourished children for 1 month, infant formula sufficient for about 1,250 babies, and over 3,500 cartons of high-energy biscuits. Partners also continued screening thousands of children for malnutrition, as I've just highlighted. On health, more than 30 truckloads of medicines, blood units, trauma, and surgical materials were collected. A hemodialysis center was rehabilitated. 5,400 pregnant women, newborns, and women and girls of reproductive age received support, and over 50 patients were evacuated abroad. On water, partners delivered 13,000 cubic meters of drinking water every day across more than 1,000 locations. They also repaired networks and provided hygiene kits to about 600 households. More information online on OCHA's website, but of course, while we've seen an increase in material being able to be brought in by us, people need much more, and our colleagues on the ground are more than ready to do much more to the extent that our humanitarian work is facilitated. Note on shelter. Today, partners warn that humanitarian aid must not be used to facilitate or legitimize mass displacement. This follows the recent Israeli announcement that the ban imposed on early March on shelter items would be lifted, allowing the entry of tents and other shelter items to resume. Our partners estimate that meeting the existing shelter needs of about 1.4 million people requires 3,500 truckloads of tents, tarpaulins, and basic household items, and this is without factoring in any future displacement, which would only drive shelter need even higher. And in the pipeline outside Gaza, we currently have about 86,000 tents and over 1 million tarpaulins and sealing off kits and about 5 million non-food items waiting, but bringing those supplies remains a challenge. For example, one of our partners note that the ongoing restrictions on international NGOs as well as UNRWA continue to block shelter deliveries. Finally, our shelter partners also stress that Zikim Crossing, which leads directly to the north and to Gaza City, must remain open to ensure that aid reaches those areas, including where there is intensified military operations. And as you may have seen, this plan also involves the construction of a bypass road diverting Palestinian traffic away from the main Jerusalem-Jericho road. In this context, OCHA notes that such roads undermine territorial contiguity and increase travel times and negatively affect people's livelihoods and access to services. Turning to turning to Sudan, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says they are alarmed by reports of attacks on healthcare in Darfur region at a time when the country's cholera outbreak is spreading. Yesterday, our friends at Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, reported that the organization had suspended all of its activities at Zelenge Hospital in central Darfur following a grenade attack inside the facility. MSF says they cannot resume their operations until clear security guarantees are in place for staff and for patients. Since the beginning of this month, MSF has led cholera emergency response at the hospital, treating more than 160 patients in just over 2 weeks in coordination with the State Ministry of Health. Our humanitarian colleagues underscore that the conflict parties must respect protection afforded to healthcare under international humanitarian law. The rules of war are clear, and the wounded and the sick medical personnel in hospitals must be protected at all times. Meanwhile, we, along with our humanitarian partners, continue to support the work by Sudan's Ministry of Health to expand access to cholera vaccines. Authorities report that oral vaccination campaigns, which are set to include later this week, have reached more than 2 million people across Khartoum, Al-Jazeera State, and Sennar State. In the first half of this year alone, our colleagues at UNICEF delivered 7.6 million doses to help contain the outbreak. We, along with our partners, are also providing vital food assistance whenever and wherever possible, despite insecurity and access constraint. On the 14th of August, for the first time since the outbreak of the conflict, WFP reached rural parts of Khartoum locality in North Darfur, providing food assistance for about 50,000 displaced human beings. This is critical support for communities that had long been cut off from receiving aid. And an update from our peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They are telling us about developments in Ituri and North Kivu provinces. Yesterday, gunfire was reported near the UN's missions base in Bayou and also close to the base of the Uganda People's Defense Forces in Bull in Ituri province. The UN mission activated security protocols and deployed patrols to secure the area nearby sites, hosting internally displaced people. Meanwhile, the mission's force commander sent a delegation to Komanda, Ituri province, to meet community representatives and honor the victims of the massacre perpetrated by the ADF in July. From the 15th to the 18th of August, the UN mission deployed a mobile operating base in Sulenyama in Urumu territory, which is also in Ituri, to support demobilization efforts with the help of religious leaders. That was done at the request of local communities. Just this morning, you heard a briefing, Security Council members held a meeting on threats to international peace and security caused by terrorist acts. The Undersecretary General for the UN Office of Counterterrorism, Vladimir Voronkov, briefed and said that threats posed by Daesh remains volatile and complex, with the group and its affiliates continuing to adapt and demonstrate resilience despite sustained counterterrorism efforts. He added that while multiple Daesh leaders have perished in the past few years, the group has managed to retain its operational capacity. Mr. Voronkov stressed the persistence of the threat posed by Daesh, despite significant national and international efforts, underscores the urgency of sustained global cooperation through counterterrorism approaches that are compliant with international law, grounded in human rights, and are gender responsive. Also briefing was Natalia German, the Assistant Secretary General, head of the Counterterrorism Committee. She noted that Daesh's use of artificial intelligence in social media for recruitment, fundraising, and propaganda purposes demands innovative responses. Ms. German warned that we stand at the crossroads of technological transformation and geopolitical uncertainty. The threat of terrorism is more diffuse and complex. Those remarks were shared with you. Lastly, we got some money today, which is the only... Sorry? Well, he may pop up when he hears this. You may see him run down. There's one place in the world where you can see the sunrise in the Pacific and the sunset in the Atlantic.
Someplace like Vanuatu?
The sun, you could see it from, you stay in the same place, you just turn. You can see the sun rise in the Pacific and set on the Atlantic.
So it's...
Sorry? Who said Panama? Panama.
I was just there.
There you go. How was the sunset and the sunrise?
I mean, from the other side of the canal, I mean, looks beautiful.
Excellent.
Welcome to Moonlight.
All right. Excellent. And we thank Hazel, who is our guest quizmeisters today. All right. If you have a question, go ahead. Use your microphone, please. Hold on. You need Sinan will show you how to do it.
This is Namo Abdullah, a new journalist at Rudao Media Network. Sorry, I dropped my phone. Actually, on this ISIL report assessment, I just wanted to ask where Secretary General stands on the Syrian Democratic Forces in Syria going forward, their role in countering ISIS and their integration into the Syrian state. How important is this for the fight? Thank you.
The integration of all security forces in Syria is critical. And as we've said repeatedly, we hope that the discussions between the government and various factions will move ahead. It is important for the unity of Syria, and it is also important for the continued fight against extremism and terrorism. Edie, even though you were in Vanuatu and cannot see the Atlantic from Vanuatu.
I'm thinking about the international dateline.
Yeah, okay.
Does the Secretary General have any comment on Israel's giving final approval today to new settlements that will cut the West Bank in two?
I mean, as you know, our position has remained steady and consistent. We stand against all settlement activity in the occupied territories, which we view as illegal under international law and against resolutions. And we condemn the decision taken today on expanding this particular settlement, which, as I've said, both those who are for it and against it agree that it will drive a stake through the heart of the two-state solution, and we call on the government of Israel to halt all settlement activity and comply fully under its obligations comply fully with its obligations under international law. Michelle Nichols, and then Sherwin.
Thank you, Steph. The Israeli military has also just said that Israel's entered the first stages of its planned attack on Gaza City. Does the UN have any idea of sort of how many civilians might still be there? How many staff does the UN have there?
There are civilians there. There's humanitarian staff. I mean, we've seen the kind of the political decision moving towards those military operations. We've stood firmly against it. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it will just create another mass displacement of people who've been displaced repeatedly since this phase of the conflict started.
And then I know OCHA has been putting out some stuff about trying to get more shelter, tents and shelter, and you've mentioned it. How much has gotten in?
I think I read out what we were able to
Oh, did you?
bring.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I did.
So I'll go back.
That's okay.
Just
Sure,
to return to the E1 settlement, your position on that is steady and consistent, and on your condemnation is noted. But what does your engagement look like, right? You're calling on the Israelis to reverse this. Who are you engaging with? Are you engaging directly with them, with other member states, in terms of seeking a reversal here? What does that look like, Steph?
The settlement project is not something that started today, all right? And we have been passing on the same message to the Israeli authorities for quite a long time. The success of our messaging is clear for all to see. The settlement continues, and I think member states, and a large number of member states, have held the same position because it's in line with international law. But it is up to the government to actually make the decision and reverse the decision.
The consequence, of course, of that is that the Palestinian state is slowly being erased from the map. The Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, said that the Palestinian state is being erased from the table, not with slogans, but with action. So the consequence of your messaging being ignored by the Israelis is that a future Palestinian state is being impugned by these actions, which means for how much longer are you able to stand there and talk about a future two-state solution?
Well, we will continue to talk about it because we don't see any other alternative. We're very cognizant of the facts that are being built brick by brick on the ground, and we will continue to advocate both publicly and privately on our position.
Can I ask you about the International Criminal Court? The United States has just announced designations of additional judges, 2 judges and 2 prosecutors, in addition to designations that happened in June targeting 4 judges as it relates to the Israeli arrest warrants and issues related to Afghanistan. What is the UN's position on the sanctioning of ICC officials by the United States?
Look, as you know, for the Secretary General, the ICC is a separate institution, right? It's separate from the Secretary, distinct mandate. He has no authority or control over it. That being said, we firmly believe that the ICC is a key pillar of international criminal justice, and we respect their work. We're very concerned about the decisions taken to further hit ICC officials with sanctions under the order that came out from the United States. The decision imposes severe impediments on the functioning of the Office of the Prosecutor and respect for all the situations that are currently before the court. Judicial independence is a basic principle that must be respected. And these types of measures undermine the foundation of international justice.
Does that mean you're asking the United States then to withdraw these designations?
I think that would be the good decision to make. Yes, sir, and then Georgia.
Thank you, Steph. With regard to the Secretary General visit to Japan at the moment and his planned bilaterals, does his bilaterals include any meetings with leaders from the Sahel and West Africa?
He will be. I mean, he will be having bilateral meetings with a number of the African leaders that are there, and those will likely take place tomorrow.
Any Sahel countries?
Once they've happened, I will let you know which ones he's met with. Please.
Thank you, Stéphane. Yesterday, through the Cyprus Humanitarian Maritime Corridor, transferred more than 1,000 tons of humanitarian aid to Gaza, especially for children. Does the Secretary General support this effort, or do you have any comment on that? Thank you.
Yes, I mean the Cyprus corridor, which is a critical part of the humanitarian pipeline, resumed yesterday. It's being led by the Republic of Cyprus, supported by our colleagues at the UN Office for Project Services at UNOPS, as part of what was designed by Security Council Resolutions 2720. The advantage of the Cyprus corridor is that the Israeli customs clearance takes place in Cyprus. It took place in Limassol, so we hope that it will speed up the release of the items that arrive at the port of Ashdod and get them to Gaza as soon as possible. Okay, anyone online? All right, Deji.
Thank you. Okay. It's really disturbing. It's been reported the latest Reuters poll showed that 58% of Americans believe that all member states of the United Nations should recognize the state of Palestine. What is Secretary General's take on this latest poll in the U.S.?
I will let journalists such as yourselves comment on the results of the poll.
Should the American government listen to their people?
I will let you write up your story without comments
I have
from me.
one more question. I saw this poster today in the at the entrance of the UN. We know we joked about this casino thing for quite some time. They're going to have a public hearing on next Thursday. As one of the most important resident in the neighborhood, what exactly is the serious UN position on the potential construction of a casino?
Look, that will be a decision taken, I believe, ultimately by the governor of the state of New York. I think it is clear that we do believe that this neighborhood has a certain character, a certain seriousness to it, and we hope that it is preserved. Abdelhamid, did you have a question?
No, not really.
All right, thank you.